My name's Claire Donovan, I'm 39 years old, and I found out the hard way that family loyalty only stretches so far. That lesson hit me square in the gut the day my own mother stood up during my ex-husband's custody hearing and branded me an unfit parent. "Your Honor, my daughter has always been unstable," she announced, her words carrying through the packed courtroom like a hammer. "She can't hold a job for long. She's been bouncing in and out of therapy for years. Honestly, I don't think she's fit to raise my grandson." I sat there at the defendant's table, wearing a plain navy blazer and a crisp white blouse, my brown hair pulled back in the same no-nonsense style I'd kept for 15 years. The wedding ring I'd finally taken off 6 months earlier had left behind a pale groove on my finger, practically glowing under the courtroom's harsh fluorescent lights. Across the aisle, Adrian, my ex-husband, sat grinning like he'd already won, his high-priced lawyer nodding along to every poisonous word my mother delivered. It was obvious they'd rehearsed this ambush, banking on the fact that a mother's criticism would stick with any judge. "She's never been able to provide stability," my mother pressed on, her voice gaining confidence as she settled into her attack. "She vanishes for days, says she's working, but I've never seen proof of steady employment. My grandson deserves a real home with his father, a man who has a solid career and the means to raise him properly." In the front row sat Lucas, my 8-year-old son. His big dark eyes were filled with confusion as he watched his own grandmother tear me down. Beside him, my sister Melissa stared straight ahead, carefully avoiding my gaze, her silence cutting almost as deeply as my mother's words. I thought about the past 2 years since the divorce, long nights lying awake, working out custody schedules, all while tackling some of the toughest cases in the state court system. It had been a constant balancing act, trying to meet the demands of my position while still being the mother Lucas needed me to be. "She lives in some cramped downtown apartment," my mother continued. "Drives a beat-up old car, can barely scrape together enough for school supplies. Meanwhile, Adrian has a beautiful house in the suburbs, a steady income, and can give that boy the life every child should have." Up on the bench sat Judge Eleanor Whitman, her expression unreadable as she listened. I'd known Patricia for more than a decade, shared professional circles with her, but now she gave no sign she recognized me. She kept her mask of impartiality firmly in place, as the job demanded. "And another thing," my mother said, really hitting her stride now, "Claire's always been cagey about her so-called work. She claims to have some important job but won't tell us what it really is. For all we know, she's mixed up in something shady, something that could put my grandson in danger." The courtroom stirred with low murmurs of agreement. On the left side, Adrian's family filled nearly every seat, nodding like churchgoers listening to a sermon. My side looked practically empty, just a few friends who had managed to get time off work to back me up, the ones who actually knew what I did for a living. Adrian's attorney, Daniel Mercer, rose smoothly to address the judge. "Your Honor, this testimony makes it clear that the child's best interests lie with my client." The mother's pattern of instability and her refusal to explain her employment raised serious questions about her fitness to parent. I sat still, hands folded neatly on the table in front of me, watching the performance play out. 15 years on the bench had taught me that timing was everything, that sometimes the smartest move was to stay quiet and let others reveal themselves before making your own move. "Ms. Hayes," Judge Whitman said finally, addressing me directly. "How do you respond to these claims about your work and your ability to support your son?" I rose slowly, every movement measured. "Your Honor," I said evenly, "I'd like to call a witness to address those concerns." Adrian's lawyer looked startled. "Your Honor, we received no notice of additional witnesses. The witness only became available this morning," I explained, keeping my voice calm. "But his testimony should clear up any doubts about my employment." Judge Whitman gave a small nod. "Very well. You may call your witness." I walked to the courtroom doors and pulled them open. In stepped a tall man dressed in a flawless dark suit, silver hair perfectly in place, and a presence that demanded respect the moment he entered the room. "Your Honor," I said, my voice ringing clear through the suddenly hushed chamber, "I'd like to call Chief Justice Jonathan Pierce to the stand." An audible gasp rippled through the courtroom. My mother's confident expression crumbled into confusion, then outright horror, as the Chief Justice of the State Supreme Court strode toward the witness box. "Chief Justice Barrett," I began, slipping into the professional tone that had served me well for years, "would you please identify me for the record?" He looked straight at me, his voice formal but warm. You are the Honorable Claire Donovan, Associate Justice of the State Supreme Court, where you have served with distinction for the past 8 years. The silence that followed was deafening. I could hear my mother's sharp breath, see Adrian's lawyer shuffling through papers like maybe the right document would save him. And could you describe the scope of my responsibilities, Chief Justice? I asked. Justice Donovan presides over some of our most difficult civil and criminal cases, he replied. She serves on our appellate panel for death penalty cases, chairs the Judicial Ethics Committee, and has authored several landmark opinions in family law and child welfare. I saw Lucas's eyes light up with wonder as it finally clicked for him, why his mom worked late nights, why she locked herself away with heavy stacks of legal briefs, why she carried herself with such authority when she spoke about fairness and justice. One last question, Chief Justice, I said. Could you address the concerns about my financial stability? He allowed himself a small smile. Justice Donovan earns an annual salary of $195,000, plus benefits. She owns her downtown apartment, a penthouse, to be precise, and maintains a vacation home in the mountains. Her financial disclosures, like those of all sitting judges, are part of the public record. I turned toward the gallery, locking eyes with my mother, whose mouth was still hanging open. Her carefully rehearsed testimony had just collapsed like a house of cards. Your Honor, I said, addressing Judge Whitman, I'd like the court to understand why my family had no idea about my position. Judge Whitman gave me a nod, her interest clearly piqued. 8 years ago, when I was appointed to the state Supreme Court, I made a deliberate choice to keep my professional life separate from my personal one. It wasn't because I was ashamed, far from it. I wanted my son to have a normal childhood, without the spotlight or pressure that comes with being a judge's kid. I glanced at Lucas, who looked both proud and puzzled at the same time. So, I kept things simple. I lived modestly, drove a practical car, did my shopping at regular stores. I wanted Lucas to grow up learning the value of hard work and humility, not thinking the world owed him something because of who his mother was. When I looked over at Adrian, he seemed like he was seeing me for the first time. During our marriage, he'd mocked what he called my boring courthouse job, never once caring enough to ask what I actually did all those long nights. The reason I've sometimes been gone for days, I continued, is because I've been presiding over complicated trials that can stretch on for weeks or months. And the reason I couldn't always be at school functions? Because I was writing decisions that would impact thousands of families across this state. Chief Justice Barrett added his voice then. If I may, Your Honor, he said, Justice Donovan is one of the sharpest legal minds I've worked with in my 30 years on the bench. Her rulings have stood firm in federal court, and she's earned national recognition for her work in family law. I returned to the defendant's table, but the truth was, I wasn't really a defendant at all. I was exactly what I'd always been, a judge with 15 years of experience and a reputation built on fairness and integrity. Your Honor, I told Judge Whitman, my career has been dedicated to protecting children and families. I've issued rulings that rescued kids from dangerous homes, that guaranteed fair custody arrangements, that placed child welfare above everything else. The room had gone utterly still. So for someone to claim I'm unfit to care for my own child, it's not just false. It's insulting. It's a slap in the face to every family I've fought for and every child I've protected from this very bench. I turned my gaze on my mother, whose face had gone pale. And the most painful part of all this, I said, is that these accusations are coming from people who never once showed interest in what I do, who never asked, who simply assumed the worst. Adrian's lawyer was scrambling to recover. Your Honor, we were unaware of. Of what? I cut in sharply. That your client was married to a state Supreme Court justice for 6 years and never thought to ask what she actually did for a living? Judge Whitman leaned forward. Mr. Crawford, are you saying your client didn't know his wife's profession during their marriage? Adrian stammered, she said she worked at the courthouse. I thought she was a clerk or something. The sheer ridiculousness of it hung in the air like smoke after a fire. I'd spent 6 years married to a man who thought I was nothing more than a clerk, who never questioned the long hours, the stacks of legal briefs, the trips for judicial conferences. Your Honor, I said firmly, turning back to Judge Whitman, I'd like to submit my judicial performance evaluations, my financial disclosure forms, and the custody evaluation prepared by Dr. Fiona Clark, the court-appointed child psychologist. Judge Whitman flipped through the documents with practiced efficiency. Dr. Clark rates you as an exemplary parent, with a strong bond to your child and no concerns whatsoever about your ability to provide care and guidance. I let my eyes sweep across the courtroom, my mother, unable to look at me, my sister, her face tight with shame, Adrian, staring at the floor, and Lucas, gazing at me with a mixture of awe and pride that broke my heart a little. Your Honor, I said, my voice steady, I've spent my entire career making sure children's best interests come first. I've seen what happens when parents turn their kids into weapons, when families rip each other apart out of spite, when assumptions take the place of facts. My tone grew stronger. That's why I'm requesting full physical custody of my son, with supervised visitation for the father until he completes co-parenting classes. And I'm asking that all future custody matters exclude extended family members who've already shown they're willing to lie under oath. Judge Whitman's face was grave as she gave her ruling. Given the evidence presented, and the troubling testimony from the mother's side, I'm granting full custody to Justice Donovan. The father's visitation will be supervised for 6 months, subject to review upon successful completion of court-ordered parenting classes. As the courtroom slowly emptied out, Lucas rushed over and wrapped his arms tight around my waist. Mom, why didn't you tell me you were a judge? He whispered, looking up at me with wide eyes. I crouched down so we were eye to eye. Because I wanted you to love me for being your mom, I said gently, not for the job I do. His face lit up with a grin. I still think it's awesome. Does this mean you can send people to jail? Sometimes, I admitted with a small laugh. But more often, I help families figure out how to take care of each other. My mother approached then, moving slowly, all the bravado drained out of her. Claire, I didn't know. I'm so sorry. I rose to my feet, keeping my arm around Lucas's shoulders. Mom, you swore under oath that I was unfit to raise my own son, without knowing anything about my life, my work, or what I'm capable of. You were willing to destroy our bond because of your assumptions and prejudices. Her eyes filled with tears. I thought I was helping. Adrian said whatever he needed to say to get custody, I cut in. And you believed him over your own daughter. By then, the courtroom was nearly empty, just a handful of family members and a few curious onlookers who hadn't left yet. For 15 years, you've asked me what I do, and I brushed it off because I valued my privacy. But you never pushed, never showed real curiosity. You just assumed that because I didn't brag, I had nothing worth bragging about. I glanced at my sister Melissa, who sat in the front row quietly sobbing. I became a judge at 31, I continued. One of the youngest in this state's history. I've written opinions that law students still study. I've helped protect countless children and families. My life's work has been about justice and fairness. From the gallery, Chief Justice Barrett stepped forward with a respectful nod. Claire, he said, I hope today doesn't make you doubt the importance of the work you're doing. Thank you, Chief Justice, I replied. If anything, today reminded me exactly why that work matters. Later, as Lucas and I walked out of the courthouse hand in hand, I realized something important. In trying to shield my son from the burdens of my position, I'd ended up hiding who I truly was from the people closest to me. But I also learned that respect built on false assumptions crumbles instantly, while respect earned through integrity and truth stands unshakable. 6 months down the line, Adrian finished his parenting classes and was given unsupervised visitation. He never remarried, and he never again questioned my ability to provide for our son. My mother mailed me a letter of apology, but I never responded. Some betrayals cut too deep, they reveal too much about a person's character to ever be patched over. Now, Lucas proudly tells his friends that his mom is a judge. He's learning about justice, fairness, and the courage to stand up for what's right. He also understands that sometimes, the people who love you most can also cause the deepest wounds, but that doesn't take away from your worth. As for me, I realized hiding your light doesn't protect you, it just gives others permission to underestimate you. I stopped tucking away my achievements, started embracing them, and showed my son that hard work and integrity are things to be proud of. The woman who walked into that courtroom feeling ambushed and alone was the same woman who walked out, but this time, I was vindicated, confident, and strong. The difference wasn't in what I'd accomplished, it was finally letting people see the truth about who I had been all along. Justice, I discovered, isn't only something you deliver from the bench. Sometimes, it's something you have to claim for yourself.